Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again, everybody's favorite segment, the power rankings. Guys, this is take number 3. I'm not gonna lie, I've done this 2 full times already, 25 minutes each, and my camera was full and did not save anything, so I got a little mad, took a break, and we're here and we're doing take 3 because promise you guys, I'm gonna do this every week, every Sunday. The power rankings are gonna come out. So please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. 80% of you guys do not. And if we hit 750 subs by the end of August, I will be giving away a hat. I talked about it last week as well, but that's the target. We're trying to get 1,000 by the end of the season. We'll give away 3 in that case. But guys, if there's ever a time that I could use that sub, it's today on take number 3. I'm gonna end up talking about power rankings for over an hour today. Throat's a little sore, but we're gonna do it, and I want to do it, so we're gonna jump right into it. Might be a little quicker this time, but we're gonna do it. Number 30, Kansas City, 1-3 against Detroit, 0-3 against the Yankees. The Royals have continued to make a case to be the worst team in the MLB. Had them in last for a couple of weeks in a row there, back maybe a month ago. Oakland took it back, and now they've taken it right back because I don't see them being any better than Oakland at this point. They continue to lose to teams like Detroit, get smashed by the Yankees. They're just not picking up any wins, whereas at least number 29, we got the Oakland A's. At least they win a series. They beat Boston 2-1. They lost 3-4 to Houston, but they kept some of those games close, and really they could have easily taken at least one more of them and split that series. Oakland continues to keep teams at bay a little bit, keeping the games a little bit closer, whereas the Royals are just terrible. Speaking of terrible, we got number 28, the White Sox, 0-2 against the Mets, 0-3 against Minnesota, and the White Sox have pretty much made a case now that they're equally as bad, if not, well, they're not as bad, but they're bad, and they continue to lose. And at one point, maybe a month ago, thought if they went on a little bit of a run, we'd be talking about them potentially having a shot at the division. I think those talks are gone. The White Sox, they're in rebuild now, and I don't know what the path forward for this team is going to be like. They got a lot of work cut out for them, and it probably is going to be a long road ahead for them. Number 27, we got the Pittsburgh Pirates, 1-2, and it's Cleveland, 1-2 against the Angels. The Pirates continue to lose series after series. They've clearly became the worst team in this National League Central. They did have an early good April. Everyone was surprised back then. I even had them as my top surprise in April when I made that video, but the Pirates since then have fallen apart, and they don't really have the talent, it seems like, or the momentum, the confidence. I don't know what it is, but in this division, they've clearly fallen into last place, and I don't see a big road out for them. Pirates, it's not surprised that they're in the bottom row, I guess. We've seen them in the bottom row every single season for like 4 seasons now, so it's not too much of a surprise at this point. Number 26, we have the Rockies, 1-1 against Houston, 2-1 against Miami. So a little bit of a 5-game week for the Rockies, and they had a winning week. Got to be pretty excited about that. They continue to be pretty much a big threat when they're playing at home. Coors continues to be a pretty big home field advantage for a team like the Rockies. But we know they're last place in the National League West, and that's pretty much where they're going to sit. Maybe they're starting to build some momentum. Maybe we're going to see them next year start to be in the bottom next row. We saw this kind of thing with Baltimore. We saw this kind of thing with Arizona for a couple of seasons. They were in the bottom row. Eventually, those tables tend to turn, I guess, unless you're the Pittsburgh Pirates. Next up, number 25, Washington Nationals, 1-2 against the Cubs. Big series sweep against San Francisco Giants. I didn't see that one coming, but the Nationals seem to be the team in the bottom row that is the furthest along, possibly in being a rebuild, being a threat in seasons to come. But if you're in the bottom row, you're not making the playoffs. And there's not much else to say about that. Number 24, probably a team that's still also not making the playoffs. Detroit Tigers, 1-2 against the Padres over the weekend, so they lose that series. The only series they tend to win is against the Royals. It seems winning 3-4 earlier in the week. They split the season series pretty much with the Chicago White Sox, so Detroit not really getting any momentum. They had that big losing streak that really set them out of the playoff race. And they're just not a team that is going to be capable of putting couple of wins together, a few wins together. That's what you're going to need if you're going to be in the playoffs. I don't care if you're in the American League Central. you still need to win games. You need to play above 500 baseball the rest of the way. I just don't see Detroit being capable of that. Next up, New York Mets, 2-0 against the White Sox, 1-1 against Boston. We're playing the Sunday Nighter right now. I always film these videos right when the Sunday Nighter starts. Sure enough, that game is probably half over right now. I don't know what the score is. Last I saw it was 1-0 Boston. So Mets continue to be that team that realistically, maybe if they went on a run, they could make the playoffs. And I'll be saying that, I guess, about the next 5 teams after this. But their pitching and their batting, it's just no consistency whatsoever. They continue to lose games, and they're not picking up series wins. The Mets have a long way to go, and I just could not move them any higher than 23. 22, we got St. Louis Cardinals, 3-0 against Miami. So they started the week really strong. They're kind of in the same boat as the Mets. Just had a bad year, but coming into this week, sweeping, and they're like, okay, they're in a division where they maybe can make some gains here. They're going to have a big series against the Cubs over the weekend, and they fall flat. They win the first game, and then they lose the next 3, and that just sets them right back, and it has me thinking that the Cardinals, along with the Mets, are pretty much running out of runway to even have a shot at the playoffs here. Number 21, right ahead of the Cardinals. So even though they went 3-1 against the Cardinals over the weekend, they beat the Washington Nationals 2-1. They have a lot of winning they got to do. 1 week of winning isn't going to make up for all the losing that they did up till now. Sure, I've talked about it before. They seem like a team with a roster that should maybe be in a playoff hunt. A lot of talk going on. Are they trading Stroman at the trade deadline? Are they going to make other trades like Bellinger? With those kind of talks circling around the clubhouse, you need to get on a big win streak here to be in the playoff race so that those trades don't happen. Otherwise, they're going to be right there at number 21, and that's kind of where I see them going. I don't see the run happening, and that's why. Number 20, Seattle Mariners, 2-2 against Minnesota. Big series win against Toronto over the weekend was Toronto comes into Seattle, all the fans flocking down. Seattle finds a big win. They almost found the sweep today, so that's pretty exciting. Seattle, nice winning week. This is a team that's above 500, even though I got them at number 20. It's kind of been a very inconsistent season for them, and they have to keep playing the way they did this week for a couple of weeks, and they'll skyrocket. These next 2 teams, we're going to start talking about teams that just start winning your games, and you're going to move up this board relatively quickly. But right now, Seattle has a couple of teams to hop. Still have to find that consistency, and until they do that, I'm going to keep them right there at number 20. Number 19, with the San Diego Padres, a nice winning week for them. They started the week beating the Blue Jays 2-1, beat Detroit 2-1. Didn't find any sweep, especially in Detroit. You would have liked to see it. The Padres are finding some wins. In a season that has been full of losing for the Padres, it's nice to have a week like this, but they have to build on it. They have to get the momentum going. This team has the pitching to get there. They have the monster contracts. They have the monster bats at the top of their lineup. We've seen some call-ups this week in the bottom of their lineup making a difference. Can they keep it going? They have 3 teams ahead of them in their division. They have a few teams ahead of them in the wild card race. I think they're about 6 or 7 games ahead of the wild card at this point, so winning streaks have to happen for the Padres to move on up. Number 18, Miami Marlins, 0-3 against St. Louis, 1-2 against Colorado. So one of the most falling teams on the whole power rankings board is the Marlins. For the longest time this season, I had them in the bottom 2 rows. Took a lot of heat for that because they were basically playing 600 baseball. I just wasn't quite a believer, but they just kept winning. So I slowly had to move them up. I think at one point I even got them to the top row after watching them for a couple of weeks, and they managed to beat, I think, the Blue Jays in there. They beat the Phillies in there. They were on a little bit of a win streak. Then over these past 3 weeks, the wheels are just completely falling off, and they've been losing more than they're winning by a lot. And it's starting to show because they didn't have the largest cushion in terms of the playoff race, but to slip this far, it's a lot of concern. They're right there on the border of the playoffs, and I don't know if they can get back to those 600 winning ways that they were once at. So I think that's a pretty prime spot for them. Number 17, we got the LA Angels, 3-0 against the Yankees, 2-1 against Pittsburgh. Nice 5-1 week for the Angels, and I think doesn't happen too often. A team has a week like this, and I think I dropped them a couple spots in the playoff rankings. Most of that is, I think the 1-9 maybe flattened it out for them. Like the 10 games before that, they went 1-9. We have teams up here that, in my opinion, are a little bit stronger, maybe had more convincing weeks to me of why they should potentially be a playoff team as opposed to the Angels. The Angels' depth continues to be a concern, of course. Can they just rely on Otani and Trout and those guys? Some of their bats, the depth starting to come around a little bit, but there's just so many question marks about the Angels over the past 3 years. Every time we start to get a little hope in them, they fall apart. So I think we're going to try not giving them hope and see if they can just build off that instead. Quite possible, right? Number 16, Cleveland Guardians, 2-1 against Pittsburgh, 2-1 against Philadelphia, 4-2 against the Pennsylvania teams. Solid week for Cleveland, showing their pitching at the forefront of this team. Bullpen getting some close wins against Philadelphia over the weekend. They dropped the third game, going for the sweep against Philly. Don't know if, like you'll see here, I have them behind Philly. I'll even throw Philly up right now, number 15. But Cleveland, even though they won the series, I do still think Philly has a little bit of the edge here. I do think, and then best of 7 Philly would be stronger. The bats have been a big concern for Philly at number 15. They just mean to get shut out when it goes against good pitching. They're struggling against good pitching. They went 1-2 against Milwaukee earlier in the week, so a 2-4 week for Philly. They got to figure it out because when it comes to playoff race, playoff time, they got to find a way to beat this good pitching. They do have the strong lineup that is supposed to be able to do it. Pitching is supposed to be the bigger concern for Philly, but right now it is those bats. Number 14, Minnesota Twins, 2-2 against Seattle, 3-0 against the White Sox. So an awesome week for Minnesota Twins, the kind of week that we expect to see more often from them. A nice split with Seattle. They sweep the crappy White Sox that they've been beaten up on, but at the same time, they didn't really gain too much ground over Cleveland. Cleveland continues to be on their heels, and they got to keep it going right now. Both these teams not in the top 2 rows, which is technically playoff-capable teams, but as we know, one of those teams is going to make the playoffs. They're just going to be the worst team in the playoffs. Number 13, New York Yankees, 0-3 against the Angels, so a really rough start. Coming out of a series before that where they lost to the Colorado Rockies, a lot of concern, but it was nice to see the Yankees come back with a huge sweep against the last place Royals, but they swept them. A lot of credit needs to go there. They still continue to have a lot of the big names, like with Aaron Judge being out for so long, it did hurt them a lot in the standings. They were last place in the American League East for quite some time, but they bounced back. We're going to see really next week is going to be a big deal for them, whether they can figure it out. They're either going to start to climb and show that they deserve to be in that spot, or they're going to start falling because all these other teams are fresh on their tails. This is a tight race when we're starting to talk wild card. Number 12, Arizona Diamondbacks, 2-1 against Atlanta. It was nice to see them pick up a big series win against the top Braves. Put up a ton of runs in that one game. I think the score with both teams scored close to 35 runs combined. It was wild. But then they go into a big series against a team that they're going to be competing with in terms of playoff race, maybe in the playoffs itself, against Cincinnati Reds, and they get swept. So that kind of goes to what I've been saying all season long with the Diamondbacks. Their depth is what concerns me. If Gallen and Merrill, if one of them gets a loss, then it's hard to break the streak going, right? So we saw it in this series against the Reds. The depth is what is big question for this Diamondbacks team. Number 11, I've got the Boston Red Sox. 1-2 against Oakland and 1-1 against the Mets. It hurt them a lot to me that they did not win the series with Oakland, let alone sweep them. Like these are the series you need to at least win, and they did not do that. So that did hurt them in terms of their overall ranking. They're gonna maybe come away with a win against the Mets tonight for a series win there. But the Red Sox, they're one of the hottest teams in the baseball over the past 6 weeks or so. So I gotta give them credit there. The bats, for the most part, have been a strong offensive juggernaut, and we've got a rotation that's managed to get it done. So I think the Red Sox have been going under the radar of a lot of teams, myself included here. And I think they're a strong enough team that they should be in the playoff contention conversation, especially right now. So number 11, I think, is pretty good for them. Number 10, we've got the Houston Astros, a big series win, 3-1 over Oakland over the weekend here, and they went 1-1 against Colorado earlier in the week, so it was just a little 2-game set there. Picked up the necessary wins against 2 of the weaker teams, and Houston continues to just keep that status quo going. They're staying within striking distance of Texas. Mind you, I don't think they're as strong of a team as we would have thought early in the season. Had they not been dealing with this rotation injury, had they not been dealing with these bat injuries, they'd be a top 5 team through and through all season long, but right now, they're doing quite well considering that. I do think they're a playoff caliber team. I just don't know if they're a top 5, top 6, top row kind of team right now. And that brings us up next, number 9. We got the San Francisco Giants. They started the week in a tough series against the Reds, going 2-2. Had them, like, they've been one of the hotter teams. Had them possibly breaking into the top row until this weekend, where they got swept by the Washington Nationals. Held that quite a bit against them. But had to kind of look back to April, May. How did I view San Francisco back then? I kind of considered them a bottom 2 kind of team until they started piling in a lot of the wins, showing that they could dominate their own division in that one hot stretch that they went on. But they have to find ways to keep the momentum going, because this division is super tough. You got to play 600 baseball outside of your division, and you got to beat up teams like the Washington Nationals. You can't be giving up 0-for-3 in that situation. That hurts a lot, in my opinion, in the grand scheme of things. Could look back at being a deciding factor. We'll see how they bounce back next week. Number 8, Toronto. Rough week for them, honestly. Probably could argue they could be lower, but I always find it hard because it always seems to be the bullpen that has been just killing them lately. A lot of the losses seem to be piling up on that bullpen, and I do expect them to do something about it. The bats, at times, have been super quiet, and they're just not scoring with runners in scoring position. We talked about it a lot. They're just not winning in their division. A lot going against Toronto, but they managed to stay right there in the thick of things. Had they had a little bit more luck going on their side, we would see 600-plus team here. So I do think that there's still a lot of merit to this team. They're just not seeming to put it together. And the series loss with Seattle this weekend shows it to me. A lot of bullpen loss, a lot of close game losses. They luckily managed to sneak a win out tonight. Otherwise, it probably would have been a lot worse. Number 7, we got the Cincinnati Reds, 2-2 against San Fran, 3-0 against Arizona. This team remains being the hottest across MLB, I think. Continuing to win. The only team that seems to have the answer for them is number 6. The Milwaukee Brewers, who have managed to slow them down. And Milwaukee had a good week themselves. 2-1 against Philly, 1-2 against Atlanta. So like a 500 week against 2 top teams. The pitching has been what's been carrying them. And the beat up on Cincinnati, so that really held them, in my opinion, in high regard. However, they got to find wins outside of that, right? Like 500, sure, you played 2 top teams, good. We'll see if you can start having some winning weeks against some of these middling teams. Otherwise, they're going to be slowly falling back, because I think Milwaukee's been up, they've been down, they've been up, they've been down. With a team like Cincinnati playing so well, it's only a matter of time if they don't start winning before Cincinnati catches on to them. Number 5, one of the biggest falls, 0-3 against Texas, 1-3 against Baltimore. I don't know if they actually fell in terms of ranking, but in terms of what number 5 means, they're kind of on the outside looking in. Tampa Bay, ever since these injuries are just starting to pile up on them, and it's really starting to show, and this week was no different. Swept by the Rangers, that's rough. 1-3 against Baltimore just compounds that issue. Tampa Bay, if they don't find a way to stop the way it's been falling, I think they must have been playing sub 500 over the past month. A lot of concern here. If they didn't have such a cushion from those first 2 months, we'd be looking at a team that was probably around here, but that cushion really helped out. Maybe some of those injuries are going to start to come back, the bullpen, all that's going to come together. But yeah, Tampa Bay, number 5. Number 4, Texas, 3-0 against Tampa, 1-2 against Dodgers. If they would have bounced in and beat the Dodgers, they would have been up there, top 3 team, top 2 maybe. But they gave up a lot of runnings against the Dodgers, kind of exposed the concerns I have with them with the pitching. But their offense continues to be good, continues to be top, and they're holding on to that American League West division lead right now, with Houston still keeping pace. So they can't let their foot off the gas if they're not too careful. We're going to see a little bit of a jumble here, but right now I do consider them the 3rd best team, or 4th best. Number 3, Dodgers, 2-1 against Baltimore, 2-1 against Texas. So Dodgers had a tough week, and they came out 4-2. Yeah, they've pretty much cemented themselves top in the National League West. I don't really think that's going to change. I do consider them very similar to Texas, except I think their bats are pretty much equal, but I do think the Dodgers pitching showed that it's a little stronger over this past weekend. At number 2, I do keep the Baltimore Orioles, even though they did lose to the Dodgers in that opening series. I liked what I saw. They played them very tough, very close series. and the way they bounced back and smashed Tampa Bay over the weekend. Gave them a lot of credit for that. So I wasn't ready to really do the swap, even though maybe you could do it. You could argue if that's how you do it. Baltimore's been so consistent all season long that I'm going to give them credit to stay up as the number one right now in the American League. Congratulations right there. And number one, staying up there, even though they had a 500 week, 1-2 against Arizona, 1-2 Arizona, 2-1 Milwaukee. Braves they've kind of like saved a little bit on the side. Were so dominant for like 2 months straight. They're allowed to have a 500 week. However, if you keep having 500 weeks, you're going to have these two hot teams that are right on your tail. One of them is going to pass you. It's only a matter of time. But guys, Atlanta right now still has the number one spot. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you agree with, disagree with, etc., etc. And don't forget, do me a favor, go down there, subscribe to the channel, and know a lot of you guys that make it this far skip to the front end or whatever. You guys probably don't see the beginning where I talk about the giveaway, giving away a hat, all that fun stuff. But we have to get to 750 subs by the end of August, and 1,000 by the end of the season. There'll be even more giveaways. And guys, I appreciate all the support. This is take number 3. I've been talking about power rankings for probably an hour and 10 minutes. I'm drenched, I'm sweaty, I'm ready to call it. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Peace out.